realize I don't have a camera on myself.
Finally.
I know.
Finally.
Well, who knows? We'll see if it makes the show better. All right. Anyways, we'll work on that. Anyways, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Yard Sign. I'm going to make the intro real quick since I don't have a camera on myself. We appreciate you watching the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, as you always do. 7 o'clock here on Facebook and YouTube, and coming soon to you an audio version all over the internet. So you can listen to our dulcet tones here as we discuss what's happening nationally, also statewide and locally. We appreciate you watching the Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics.
Most important, irrelevant.
That's right. And joining us, some familiar faces, a little bit little bit of a light load in terms of cast, but certainly a lot to talk about.
Wondering where you're going to land that thing.
From left to right, we got Anibal Cabrera joining us as always. Hello. And now actively promoting his Twitter account. That is Chris Licata.
Wow.
What's up, dude?
Twitter account.
Yeah.
New world.
So, again, lots to talk about. Let's go ahead and pull up our fancy new topic menu. Here we go.
Look at that.
Man,
wow.
That is fancy.
Ooh.
I like it.
All right. Anyhow, so
Should keep us on track more, right?
Well, that's the point.
That's not
of
going
it.
to happen. That's not going to happen at all.
Yeah.
How many hours are we doing this?
Well, that's the whole objective, right? Let's see. I don't know. Actually, again, I was so excited about all the new things we have to play with here. I don't even know where. That's not going to work.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's not going to work.
Wait,
either.
go back to me real quick.
Okay. So, this one right here. There you go. Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. You got quite the Charlie Chris tan there, Chris. All right. Anyways, I'll get that sorted out here in just a minute. But
That's not a good camera for me at all.
No. Don't worry. I'm gonna steal that one.
Okay. Good.
But let's go ahead and start with the biggest news: articles of impeachment. Because I don't know about you, but that's why I follow Congress, for the articles. I don't. You like that?
No, I didn't like it at all, actually.
Oh my gosh. So, votes are happening. The articles have been out. It's
They're
still
voting on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, and it seems like they've got kind of a weak case here.
Oh, they have completely
kind of.
Well, I mean, we knew this was coming.
First of all, the reason why it's on a Wednesday is the best part of this conversation that leads into just they wanted a bigger audience than 2:00 in the morning on a Friday or on a Saturday. That was so funny that they wouldn't move it out of committee until he had a bigger audience to look at it. It's something that I watch all the time, and I think it's something that everyone should be watching is C-SPAN. As
most
everyone
people are
is
not
rolling their eyes.
And it's, I mean, at the end of the day, we were talking about this before, I think they end up with, they do not pass 218 votes. Like, the measure will pass because they'll have so many abstentions, but to not actually have a majority because so many of your own side have to abstain from voting because, they're going to be held to account. Come November.
You were hearing rumblings over the weekend of individual Democrats saying maybe we should do a censure, maybe we should do something else just to be able to at least say we did something. And all of those decisions were immediately kicked out and said, no, we're not going to do it.
If they had started with that, like, that was a completely different
I think
narrative.
they would have had bipartisan support if they would have stuck to a censure. Something simple, something that makes the point that Congress is not happy, and that's fine. Congress can be not happy. It's run by a Democratic House. The president is a Republican. It's perfectly fine for that to happen. It's happened before. But the fact that the numbers game
they censured Eric Holder.
Yeah.
The Republicans censured Eric Holder.
Again, I think what's going to happen is the number game is really going to see what it goes with. If it goes above, 230, 235.
Oh, 218 is a majority.
Yes, but that's the thing, though. How close to just the simple majority will it be? Will dictate how much power.
I don't even think they get a simple majority. I'm saying they're going to get 203 to 298, and everyone else abstains.
Yeah, that's going to be it's going to be a disaster for the Democrats.
It passes, right? It's a majority.
It's a majority
because of the abstentions.
Because of the assumptions, yeah.
But
again, there are 32 House districts that were held by that are currently held by Democrats, but the one that voted for Trump. So that's the number that people are looking at. How many of those 30 are going to to not vote, not show up. Well, they're going to show up. They're just going to abstain. And that number is going to look to see what it looks like. If it goes any lower than just a simple, if it doesn't go above a simple majority, then it's egg on Pelosi's face. And
no matter
I think
what,
this
it's
is
egg on Pelosi's face.
So this is the thing, a legacy of, yes, you tried to impeach the president and it failed in the Senate. And that's your legacy. Does that piss off her people, and to where that she doesn't get she doesn't get reaffirmed as the House Majority Leader?
Well, and this I think there is some inside baseball being played in the fact that you do see, Jeff Van, the one who's defecting, and you see him defecting,
Van Drew.
I think, and then you saw a Pennsylvania state senator do the same thing inside the state government of Pennsylvania, and I think you're going to see, you're not necessarily going to see more defections, but you're going to see some Democrats not abstain and vote with Republicans.
They're already feeling the pressure of not voting to begin with, and that will piss off the base. And again, there was, I believe, 6 people of his cabinet resigned because of the transition of him moving from a Democrat to Republican. So it's fascinating to see where this is playing off, and as it continues to move in that direction, how much of a problem it's going to be for Pelosi.
I think, you end up in a situation where you could end up with a blue dog. If
the return of the blue dog Democrats.
if you had a strong coalition of blue dogs that kind of took this moment on, with Republican support, they could take the speakership.
Yeah, but those blue dog Republicans, thanks Johnny for walking through that. Just not even trying. Not even trying.
No,
to
I've
go
just given up at this point.
But there are no more blue dogs. The blue dogs are now converting to Republicans because they know they're not going to be able to win in their districts come 2020. So right there is the problem that they're having. There aren't any more blue dogs. And can we just say the impeachment documents are shorter than my thesis that I wrote? 9 pages? Are you kidding? I don't think the transcripts. There's no there.
There's no there.
I love the article.
We don't like him.
And those are the articles. The first article that they filed was abuse of power, which it's DC. He won. You're going to be upset. And the other one is obstruction of Congress, not justice, obstruction of Congress, which is a completely different line of attack when it comes into articles of impeachment.
Well, he has a constitutional ability to obstruct Congress.
Yeah, but you
like it's in his job description. It's in Article 2. It's
he's been obstructing everything, which I think is great. One of the best commentaries, PBS did an article with Megyn Kelly, and I loved it. I thought it was a 45-minute long discussion with Megyn Kelly, and she made the comment of how she's like, yes, Trump is a bull in a china shop, and you know what? Some of those things needed to get broken. Others are going to be broken, and we like them originally, and we'll put them back together if we want to for 8 years, 6 years from now, 5-6 years from now, once he's no longer in office. But that needed to happen. I think enough people were pissed off at the system that they wanted Trump. Now, the Democrats don't understand the concept of when it comes to impeachment.
Well, they don't understand cleaning shop. They don't understand clearing the deck. And I think that's what the American people did in 2016 when they elected Donald Trump, is they said, all right, let's clear it out, wipe it out, clean it up. And let's start over with all of these debates after Trump, and Democrats felt like, well, we were so close to our ultimate victory of changing the culture and changing the government and putting forth our philosophy, and Trump took that from us, so he has to be illegitimate.
But Democrats don't even think he won the White House. They still what's her name? Stacey Abrams doesn't even. She believes that she's governor of Alabama. That's Georgia. Sorry, there's a correction there. The delusion of Democrats and liberals that are coming into play right now is disgusting to the point to I think it's an endangerment of the republic when they're already talking about the illegitimacy of the 2020 election.
What's scary. That's what's legitimately scary stuff when they're coming out there and they're
already hedging their bets.
They're hedging their bets because they know, look, Trump's going to be reelected. He's going to win. Their field is extremely weak. I know that's a couple subject matter. Actually, it's a good transition. Not that we're done with the subject yet, but it's their field's weak, and Trump's going to win. And so they're saying, okay, he was illegitimate in 2016. He's illegitimate in 2020, and they're really. It's really corrosive to the electoral process. It's really corrosive to the legitimacy of a government. You know, I mean, we live in a country where it's consent of the people.
They were upset when he won in 2016 with the Electoral College, which is how we elect our presidents in this country. So again, who is the biggest threat to the republic at the moment? They said it was Trump, that if he lost, he was going to contest and he was going to fight it. What happens? Hillary is the one that contests. She's still traveling around the country in a bus saying that she won the presidency. So that's still happening. They're arguing about the Electoral College.
She's on a book tour.
She's
on a book tour.
Oh my gosh. Do they not have enough money? I don't understand. It's either Bill Clinton has gambled it all away or she needs somebody to get out of the house. So this has become a hobby for her, is the book thing. But again, the Democrats have become the greatest threat to the republic. They don't like the institutions that we have. They don't believe the populace was smart enough to elect who they elected, and they're already starting to hedge their bets on 2020.
I wouldn't even say Democrats. I would say this is endemic to leftist thought, right? Because you see this in the UK over the weekend. I know this is a different subject. Again, I'm bouncing all around the subject.
Yeah, we don't
here.
like that here.
Oh, I'm sorry, but no, I mean. They did this to Trump. This is, he won an overwhelming electoral victory, and they protested, they shouted, "Not my president." They did all this back in 2016. And now I see this on TV going on in the UK when it's the biggest majority since Thatcher.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is that because
hey, there you are. Look at that camera.
Wait a second. Do I get to have the little menu? Oh no,
that's all. That's your face. So maybe yes, we want the menu.
Yeah, throw the menu on there.
But the big thing is that Democrats think that simply because we know, right? It is confirmed that multiple countries try to interfere in our elections, as they always do. That somehow that makes it the election illegitimate, which it never has and it never will. And by bringing it into question again, they're throwing anything they can at the wall to see that something sticks. But at the end of the day, he was elected. In fact, he was elected not democratically. He was elected through the Electoral College, as it should be. And it's something else that they're fighting. And Elizabeth Warren, I think learned really quick that that was not an idea to get behind, because as soon as she came out with that soundbite of her saying that she was going to eliminate the Electoral College, I think she got quite an earful from people, and thinking that again, it proves the time and time again that liberals, given the opportunity, they will rewrite the Constitution.
And I think that's what the problem is, and the fear with the public is that they cannot trust that it's on now, Johnny. So I don't know what's going on. But they cannot trust the current group of Democrats that are in leadership at the moment, that they don't trust what's happening, and they don't feel that they're going to legitimize what gets agreed upon.
The ones in the primary field, or the ones in leadership?
I think the elites. I think the elites in the Democratic Party are failing there, because now
I don't think they have control.
Well, no. Now you look at this. When you look at Tulsi, She says that she's not running as a Republican. She's not going to run as a third party because she's fighting for the soul of the Democratic Party. I agree with her. I think the Democratic Party has completely gone off the rails when they're listening just to AOC, when they're listening just to the squad, when they're listening just to the elites of that party that have only been playing politics for maybe one cycle. We talk about this all the time. If you've only been playing politics for 1 or 2 cycles, you are not allowed to say anything. You are not, even if you get into some kind of leadership, you still don't know enough of what's happening inside the Beltway for you to be able to make the decisions that need to be made. You need to just go up there and represent your constituents.
I think part of that, though, is that there is this growing, whether it's on the Trump side or it's on the other side, it's, there is this growing, flip the table upside down and let's clean it off and start it over. And I do think AOC represents a certain part of that, right?
But the pendulum cannot swing even farther than it swung the first time around. Like we're now, and we talk about this.
I'm saying the people that are getting elected are the disruptors.
Yes.
Right. That's the new theme. Is anyone who's a disruptor, anyone who that's what Trump was to a certain extent. Right.
But do you think that people are going to elect someone else that's even more a disruptor than Trump is?
Well, the thing is, you have to be a disruptor with a plan, right?
Well, then that's Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren has a plan for everything.
No. You have to have you have to be able to disrupt, but make sense and have a logical point and still be authentic. And that was the little trifecta that I think Trump kind of pigeonholed himself into, and that it was great.
And her numbers have been dropping ever since she rolled out the Medicaid for all and her medical plans for the nation. It's been tanking since then because that's the one thing you don't want to touch. What people don't want you to touch, they don't want you to touch the doctors, they don't want you to touch anything else. The last time this happened, the Democrats literally lied to the American people when Obama was saying, and again, I don't want to use the word lie when it comes to the President Obama, but I will say it in this case when he said you can keep your doctor, you can if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That wasn't true. That was not a true statement. And the American people punished him because of that, and now they're punishing her because of it. And so that's why I think it's going to be fascinating what happens in this new primary.
Yeah, this goes back to what I'm saying is the leadership in the House has lost all control. Like they have zero control over the squad, over their, I mean, the fact that they're having defections. Yeah. Like they have lost all control. And then you look at the primary stage and you just go like, well, what's this crew like is there any energy there?
Well,
I mean,
we're gonna see
any excitement.
We're gonna see some energy on our favorite channel, PBS, who will be hosting the Democrat primary on December 19th. I don't know what time because I do not care, and because of that, I'm excited to see who gets. I believe the cutoff date has officially passed. The people, and again, this is a great segue. If we're moving on, Johnny, can we move on?
Yeah.
Hey, he put the thing on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, nice. Oh, I didn't see it. So, of the picture that's on the television, about
half of them are gone?
Yeah, I think about 3 or 4 of them are already gone, and a few others are about to be gone. How is Castro still in this? I don't know. Okay, so the people that have made it onto
what I love, the new cliche line is that there's still a path. There's still a path to the nomination. Guess what? No, there isn't. There really isn't. And even for the ones that we were kind of like hoping would gain a little bit more traction simply because they're, reasonable. Yang and Gabbard don't seem to be making the cut.
Well, no, Yang did.
Yang's polling higher.
Made the cut.
Yeah. Okay, so here are the current people that made the cut. It's Joe Biden, of course, Sleepy Joe. It's Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Tom Steyer. It's money. Elizabeth Warren, and then Andrew Yang. So now it's no longer 100% white people. They now have like a minority. So that's great. I mean, and actually people were still talking about it, that it was all white people even after Andrew Yang made it onto the board. I'm like, I think he's. You can't say that anymore.
There was a poll that came out today that had Yang up over Bloomberg. But to Johnny's point, there's no path for anyone outside of Joe, Warren, or Sanders.
But Yang and Tulsi, and even to a point of Mr. Booker, need to be on the stage just so that they're able to make those additional comments. They're able to bring up topics that no one else is talking about. I mean, heck, Tulsi Gabbard took the knees out of of what's her name?
Yeah.
The senator from California.
Harris.
And so, I mean, that was a beautiful takeout. And now you're starting to see that the current darling of the media, which is Pete Buttigieg, is actually getting like calls to find out like from the media, like who were you actually working with when you're working in the big Wall Street firms.
I think Buttigieg ends up on the ticket, and I think Yang.
You think Buttigieg gets on the ticket?
I think so. I think if you look at those top
he has
three,
0% black vote.
Like, I think
0% black vote.
If you look at those top three, especially assuming it's Joe Biden, I think, yeah. I think Buttigieg is campaigning.
If Joe Biden becomes the Democrat nominee, he's gonna go for a woman. That has to happen.
Then he has to go for Gavin.
They're even talking about he's not gonna go for.
I know.
He's like they're already talking about like, oh, he'll only run one term and then he'll give it to his VP. I'm like, this is bull. This is malarkey. This is malarkey.
Well, he'll only run one term because he doesn't know what state he's in or what year it is. You know, I mean, as he's shown on the campaign
he's trying
trail.
to bite his wife's finger during the middle of a speech that she's giving.
He's like, yeah, he'll only run one term. No, he'll only serve 1 year.
You only had to give You only had to give us someone that wasn't crazy, someone not crazy for us to kind of like, I could vote for that person over Trump.
Well, not
Yeah,
so
but
much.
see,
not so much
the
vote for
problem
that
is that we thought that Joe Biden was that person. We thought Joe Biden was the not crazy one, and he's turning out to lose it here on the campaign trail. And I don't know if it's age or stress, but he's turned out to be just as nutty as all the other ones.
It's a combination of all of the above. When, again, Hillary barely made it to the end of the campaign. She was falling on this. I mean, I remember the September 11 memorial situation where she couldn't even physically get back to her car, to the van, and she was collapsing right then and there. I remember seeing those videos. Now, it might have all been sponged from the internet, but I remember that moment. And she barely made it over the finish line when it came to November 7th. I don't think he's gonna make it through the summer. If it gets that nasty, the primaries, it gets that bad. Because remember, if you had so much faith in him becoming the president and the president, then Bloomberg wouldn't be entering the race. Then all these other people would have exited the race already. But people keep on entering the race for Super Tuesday, and I think it's going to be a disaster because he's going to have to keep on fighting. And the same way we saw with some of the other Republicans, even because it was a big field, if they can't handle it, they're going to fall off, and it's going to be ugly when they fall off.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting because you do hear even lefty commentators saying like we might be looking at a brokered convention, and I don't think they're wrong.
I don't think they're wrong, but I also think Americans don't like that.
Republicans almost got to a brokered convention.
No, they wanted it to get to that, but it never got to that point because they worked itself out. And again, it shows that there's more confusion. This is not the West Wing. That's not. People don't like that. One day of fighting, yes. One day of votes, yes. Maybe a second day. A third day, people just look crazy. And so and again, the Democrats might do that when they're a broker convention. I don't think it gets there. It just depends who wins I think it's the first 4 states. If it's all separate people, then it becomes a problem.
Here's the thing. Let's say let's play that scenario then. Let's say Elizabeth Warren takes Iowa, New Hampshire. And then what?
Buttigieg might actually
take those first 2.
It's insane.
If he takes those first 2, all right, then what?
I think if Jeb Bush doesn't take any of the not Jeb Bush, Joe Biden.
How are you getting those two confused?
Because they remind me of each other when it comes to the
Freudian slip there.
I know. When it comes to what happens,
when it comes to energy,
and when it comes to if you can't even take one hit, then we're gonna have a problem.
Well, no, but I mean, energy and patience are two different things.
Yes.
And what Jeb really did fall short with is energy. He just, it's a new game out there. I think the internet, with the amount of coverage that comes from not only traditional media but new media, I think it also there's a bigger expectation as to what you have to bring to the table.
I agree. I think the the bar has been raised so much with the Obama administration, with the Trump administration, that it requires more stamina. It requires being able to run the race. And again, who would have thought someone that's in his 70s also would be able to run the race that Trump did? And that shows you the fact that Trump is willing to fight this fight as much as it goes. He'll be probably in every single state multiple times in the areas that you don't expect him to go into.
But Trump's
because they're after the popular vote. They're after the popular vote.
Trump, yeah, but Trump's unique in the sense that he gets energy from all of this.
Oh, he absorbs it. Oh, yeah, I agree. He absorbs the energy from the crowd. Again, if you're filling 20, 30, 40,000 seat arenas, it doesn't wear him out, and he calls in people. It's such a weird environment to be in when you go to a Trump rally. I love them. I try my best to get to the front or sit in the back, and it's just electrifying. People are having fun. People are enjoying themselves. You're seeing everyone from every different color. Especially in Florida, you see a large Black and Hispanic presence at those rallies, and it's so comforting that it's almost like you're in a place where you can be yourself. Like Cheers, you're at the bar where everyone knows your name, and you're seeing like, oh, you're here. You run into people at these. Yes, I do, because you run into people, friends and family and people you wouldn't expect to be at these rallies. You're like, oh my God, you're a Trump supporter? Yeah, I'm a Trump supporter. And you're like, this is so, it builds
and they're
the
not,
community.
They're not us. They don't wake up to watch C-SPAN. They're not posting all the time.
But they've been waiting 5 hours in line to see this man. And that's the energy that gets brought up. Does that get brought up with Joe Biden? Does that get brought up with Bernie? A little bit of Bernie Sanders, but does that do it for Elizabeth Warren? And that's the problem with the Republicans. The large crowds fed equal votes. With the Democrats, it doesn't work that way. It didn't work that way last time. I don't think it's going to work that way again for Sanders. Johnny, what do you think?
I think we've kind of maxed out that topic as much as possible.
One more thing, I will say this. I can't see what's going on with the screen.
Why?
I don't know. I just can't see it. I'll say this. And this is something that we haven't touched on, because this inlines both conversations of the primary and of the impeachment. Do you think McConnell will go all 6 weeks in impeachment?
No, I think he wraps this up before January 15th.
You really think it's that quick?
If they pass it here on Wednesday, right? I think that they break for Christmas and for the New Year. They come back. He spends about 10 business days on it.
Oh,
all right, and goodbye.
I
understand. I understand. Like, I agree that it would be fun to drag that out.
Oh, it would be so much fun to
have Adam Schiff, testify in front of the Senate.
It would be so much fun.
It's not
but it's not going to be good for the Republic.
It's not good for the country. I don't think it's not good for Trump. It's not bad for Trump, but it's not, because at this point everyone's tuned out.
Well, from what I was told, and again, I was up in Tallahassee last week and I was able to talk to a few people, and like their main objective is to move on. We've raised tons of money off of this. We've raised tons of awareness. The information data banks are going crazy. Impeachment polls are going exactly the way the Republicans want it to go, which is going down. And so now the goal is to not be the scary boogeyman, which is what Republicans will be if they let it stretch out for 6 weeks. Now, don't get me wrong. You take out every single senator off of the campaign trail, which would be so much fun.
It would and it wouldn't, because we talked about that last time I was on air.
But the thing, the joy to see that
for guys
Joe
like you and me,
Biden out there taking all the oxygen would be fabulous.
Now they're gonna wrap this thing up. They're gonna get rid of it, and
I agree.
You see this in the fact that they're clearing the decks right now. They're actually passing legislation. USMCA is.
Oh my God. Okay. Someone needs to talk to Pelosi in regards to how she rolls out these things. On the same day, on the same speech,
because she needed cover.
Oh my gosh, that's what she did.
She needed cover.
The same day that she gave out the articles of impeachment is the same day that she gives the Trump administration
one of the biggest wins.
The biggest win. The U.S. Oh my God, that was the best. And we'll talk about this later. But the trade on the same day of impeachment is stupid. Also, the debate on
But I think
December
it was very
19th
telling.
Oh yeah.
I think it was very telling because again, this is all very strategic. It comes down to communication strategy, right? And I can assure you that if the House communications team felt that they had some really damning articles of impeachment, which they don't, they wouldn't have allowed the announcement for USMCA to go out at the same time. That is 101. That is communications 101. And if they did do that unintentionally, then all of them should be fired.
Well, Johnny, you know that more than anyone else in regards to communication. So I will say yes, you are probably correct on that one. But at the end of the day, we might not even have a debate on December 19th because of the labor situation in regards to where they're having the debate. And every single individual that's going to be on the platform on Thursday has already said if there isn't a conclusion to the trade issues with the labor union, that they're not going to be on stage. I love it. The adults are not running the asylum.
The grown-ups have not been in charge of the Democratic Party for a little while
you
now.
saw it.
This is not new.
You saw it, Nancy Pelosi as a hostage taker.
She was not the taker.
No, she was the
She was the hostage.
She was the hostage.
She's been a hostage to AOC since before Congress was gavelled into session.
Nancy, just blink twice if you need help. Next time you're at the podium, blink twice.
What do you think she's been doing with her dentures? She's tapping Morse code.
It's so bad. I feel so sorry for her. And at the same time, you let it happen. The far left is now running the Democratic Party. And again, it's going to come to the point to where people are just going to pull the lever for Trump, and they're not going to be happy about it, but they're going to do it. And it's because they don't have confidence in the Democrats running the country.
Well, the most telling part about this is, and I saw this earlier on Twitter, but Hector brings it up in the comments section. Thanks, buddy, as watching as always, is that you have people who are going to rally for the next 2 weeks on pro-impeachment. And again, this is, Jake was kind of brushing me off on this point, but I was telling him that I think that it's going to look bad on Democrats to be pushing for impeachment during the holidays. And if for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, if that's exactly what's going to be happening, not only at the federal, but also at the local level, that's going to play really badly in the community. And, according to Hector, there's going to be a pro-impeachment rally happening tomorrow at the federal courthouse. And again, I think that's bad show.
Yeah, but is Kathy Castor showing up to that?
No, it's probably going to be a bunch of grassroots people. I doubt it. I
don't think that really.
It's happening
plays
tomorrow.
Either way.
It's happening tomorrow. Is that what Hector says?
I don't think that necessarily plays in either direction because unless elected officials, either at the local level, the state level, at the federal level, are attending stuff like that, I don't think it necessarily hurts them any worse than voting for it, right? And I think. They're going to cast their votes on Wednesday, and then they're going to try to change the subject as quick as humanly possible.
I don't think there's any way to change it, though. It's going to be conversation for the
why
next...
do you think they passed the USMCA?
Well, and so, yeah, so there's a lot of things that are moving on right now. Again, I would love it if they don't even have the debate on Thursday. I think they're going to figure out a way to make it happen. There's going to be a break in the union, but I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day if something goes wrong. And it's a do or die situation. If there isn't a brokered situation with the unions and they still go on stage, then they look like they're against labor. If they don't show up, then the American people think the Democrats don't have their ish together. And again, they
don't have their ish together.
They don't have their ish together. So it would be great to see what happens on the national stage of that. So,
but the truth of the matter is, pay attention to what the media is focusing on. They're not focusing on the labor unions. They're not even following it as a story.
No.
Most of them are ignoring it completely, which tells me that the American public is also disconnected from that. And that also says a lot about the influence, the dwindling influence that labor unions are having across the country. We know they're pretty weak here in Florida. But I think across the country, if the mainstream media is ignoring these labor unions, despite the fact that they're trying to influence these debates, I think that says a lot more about how bad this election is going to be for Democrats.
But this might be a great transition, is what happened in the UK with their liberal with their liberal constituents. They had, again, and the colors are different in the UK. The reds are considered,
The Reds are the socialists, or the Labour,
and so there was
and
a
blue is
huge.
conservative.
It was called the Red Wall that was built on the northern part of England, where you had a lot more established Labour. You had a lot more established.
They all lost.
Yeah, and they all lost.
all lost.
And people that had been
Complete
voting Labor for almost 100 years, basically decided to turn against the Labor Party. And again, that's what's going to happen again. It's going to happen again here in the States, that the Democrats are not listening to the people. They're continually saying, no, Trump is not president.
Well,
and because Trump, he didn't win, then he's not president.
Trump built this coalition of blue collar. Over here we call it blue collar.
Yeah.
Over there they call it labor. Of blue collar workers voting for him, and I would say, I mean, he's probably, this is a newer trend, on a longer time scale, but blue collar has not been a typical voting block for Republicans.
No, and the blue collar is something that is
and
multiple races, multiple genders, or both genders. I'll say that. Only two genders, and it goes on the platform of that. It's the tent has widened. Mm-hmm. It's become much of a larger tent. So I see, again, with the increase of black vote, the increase of Hispanic vote, the minority vote increasing above 15%, which is insane. And it'll be great to see what happens in 2020. But I think that's where they are definitely aiming for the popular vote, while still maintaining the line for the Electoral College. They're not stupid. They're not going to not go for the Electoral College, because that's how you win. But they also are going for a way to expand from 63 to 65 million people voting for them, so that they're able to win the popular and the Electoral College. And then there's no way to say anything anymore. I mean, you were seeing articles online of how people were saying, well, the Labor lost it because they weren't doing X, Y, and Z. It's not a real vote.
Let's look at England for a second. It's like, is anyone arguing that Boris Johnson has a popular vote? Even the Conservatives, they took a huge, one of the largest majorities in Parliament.
80 seat majority
in Parliament. But I mean, they only got 46% of the popular vote,
and that's
normal for UK politics.
But that's
parliamentary system's different. I understand.
What is the name of the voting past the post? So with past the post, it's
first past the post.
Whoever gets the majority,
we use first past the post.
We don't use first past the post.
Yeah, we use first.
How do we use?
Because
when you're in a primary system where there is a Democrat and a Republican. How is that a pass the post?
Because whoever has the more votes wins.
Yeah, that's majority.
No, because you can have Bill Clinton would win states that with 40% of the vote, 42% of the vote. He wouldn't actually have an outright majority because Ross Perot was a spoiler, right? So all of our elections, even over here, congressional, to win a congressional seat, you just need more votes than anyone else.
I'm almost positive they don't use that term to describe our elections.
But it's similar.
I agree with that. I will say this, though. I think what's going to happen is the same thing, that the people that voted, and I think when was the first vote? 2012 for Brexit vote to get out? Or maybe even before
2015.
then. So whenever the first vote...
they voted in Parliament
whenever the first vote for Brexit... And people were upset saying that wasn't the real vote. That pissed off the majority of people. Saying,
oh, yeah.
You're telling me that my vote wasn't real? You say that to Americans, and you say Trump is illegitimate. You're telling that to 63 million Americans.
Well, that's the same thing that's happening when you tell people that that the 2016 election wasn't legitimate. You're just pissing off all those people that voted for Trump around the country, because they know they voted for him. They continue to support him. And if anything, it's now solidifying the fact that they should support him, because they see that Democrats are trying to undermine the democratic process, or our democratic process, which is the electoral college. Yes, the electrical college.
We're having issues all around today.
which brought to you by Hillsborough Community College. Visit the electrical college today. No, so
Also, the leader of Labour in the UK was like a legitimate like socialist, anti-Semite,
Yeah.
inviting Hamas
Absolutely
and
terrible
all the
human
other
being.
terrorists that he called friends to come speak. And I'm like, this is
and
he was a horrible leader.
But him by himself was actually one of many reasons why some people didn't vote Labor.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't necessarily that they switched from Labor to the Conservative Party, but
No, they would vote for a different party.
They said,
to
"Look,
allow
I'm
for
not voting
conservatives,
Labor.
yeah.
I'm voting Liberal Democrat."
Yeah.
Or because the parliamentary system has 6-7 parties.
Correct.
One of the really interesting thing was like one of the
social
third or the fourth largest party.
The head of the Social Democrats, she didn't even win her own primary.
Or she didn't even win her own
race
seat again, and she lost that seat to Labor actually. So it was one of the no, she lost that seat to the Scottish Independence Party.
Yeah, because she was up north.
Yeah, she was in Scotland. And so now the Scottish Independence Party,
Which is not going to happen.
is now the third largest party.
That's because it has 56.
Yeah.
It has 56 seats in Parliament.
Yeah.
But again, it's. I think it was I'm not voting for my enemy. I'm not voting for someone I don't trust. I'll just vote third party. I think that's what it was. It was their version of a third party vote. Which again, it gave them enough power to be able to.
Well,
have
in Scotland though, it makes some interesting math because you really have the Scottish Independence Party, which is now the third largest party in Parliament. You have Liberal Democrats, and then you have the Conservatives and Labour. And you can say, oh, well, I'm not a conservative, I'm not with Labor, but then you still have two choices in the third party arena.
But it's not going to matter because the Conservatives have such a large majority that
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I actually think they hurt themselves by doing that, because by having Liberal Democrats and having the Scottish Independence Party and not forming a union there, not patching that over the way Neil Farage patched over his Brexit party with the Conservatives, which helped Boris Johnson.
Again, this is all political theater. At the end of the day, this is why we have a two-party system, because then
I like the parliamentary system.
I hate the parliamentary system, and don't get me wrong.
I really like it.
At one moment, I was thinking of saying this entire portion of today's discussion with a British accent, and my wife told me not to. So I'm going to.
No, but to Chris's point, I would love nothing more than to see Trump or any president for that matter. Let's even go back to Obama or Bush, or having them be in the room and having to debate policy against with the prime minister and oh my god, amazing.
That would be beautiful.
That is some of the best television I've ever seen.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Best TV ever.
No,
for people like us.
No, I love our decorum. For as much as compared
you
to the
call
Brits,
that decorum
compared
these
to the
days?
Brits, we are much more like passive than the Brits are. They're straight up calling each other like horrible names in front of each other.
But they do it politely.
They do it with an accent, and that's why we think it's polite. It's because everyone loves a British accent.
And
okay, we need to move on from Brexit.
I think they do it politely. And
no, do you think the accent
versus our way of doing things, which is just quietly stabbing everyone in the back?
It's a Southern thing. I don't understand what your problem is. That's what you do. Yes, it is.
Not a Southern thing.
It's a Southern thing.
Some New York mafia.
Oh, bless. No, New York mafia is where you're in concrete. That's what that is.
Anyways,
if we offended
we get
any
5 years of
we
Boris Johnson, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
They both have weird hair. They both have a weird tan.
What's hilarious because I mean you could honestly, when they've been pictured side by side, they look like they came off of the same genetic tree. I mean, Boris Johnson looks like Trump's younger brother.
No, like a cousin. I don't think a brother, but a cousin.
All right, maybe I'll give you that. I'll give you a cousin.
Yeah,
and I'll say this: I do think Boris Johnson is the smarter of the two.
Of our president.
Between I'm not
How about
no shade to the president. I'm saying Boris Johnson.
You're not going to be invited back if you keep on talking smack.
No, I'm saying Boris Johnson is a very, very, very sharp.
Boris Johnson is an intellect.
Yes.
That disguised himself with a bad haircut. And so I agree with you that yes.
By the way, that's now a clip. I now have Chris Licata saying that the president is less intelligent than Boris Johnson. So if you ever run for office, buddy, I got you.
You're
that's
done.
okay.
You're absolutely done.
Done.
Done. Race is over before it even started.
So that's what's going on that side of town. Okay.
On that side of town?
Or on that side of the pond.
Well, you know
Okay.
what I mean.
This is
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay.
Not your side of the town.
Oh.
All right, time for Anibal's Attic. That's a perfect lead-in
Oh.
because unless you care at all about foreign policy, we're pretty sure we lost you on the whole Brexit conversation.
Why does
but-
no one care about like the British election?
Because Americans
Because nobody
don't
knows
care.
where. Yes, and no.
Like the Brits think they
Hold on.
exist 20 miles.
Well,
off.
no, and Americans have no clue where any of these countries are.
Oh, well, that's offensive right there. What are you talking about? I think it's like 21% of Americans have passports, which is a horrible No, I think that number is much higher than it was in the past.
Actually, I'm adding a subject. All right.
No, that's not how this works.
This is on the Anibal's Attic. All right. I'm
I
throwing.
haven't even started it yet.
Throwing this on the Anibal's Attic. The governor announced last week the whole civics. He wants a citizenship
That's
test at the end of
not.
high
That has
school.
nothing to do with Anibal's Attic. You obviously
right.
don't understand.
I don't
Oh
understand
my
Anibal's
God.
Attic, but it
Conversation.
has to do with what we're talking about is knowing where the hell Scotland is compared to.
That's not the civic question.
Oh,
that,
the citizenship test. All right, we'll get
It's
to
the
that later.
citizenship
That's a
test.
state issue. But
Yeah,
let's
it's
go
not.
back.
State issue.
Yeah, but the test will not go into where is Switzerland. It's going to say
Oh, good
which is first, the Declaration of Independence of the Constitution.
Well,
which
and-
was
Huh?
which was first.
The declaration was
Okay.
first. Duh.
The question.
And before between the two,
the wife and I took that test in the middle of date night. That's how.
what
like,
existed
annoying.
between the two?
What existed between the two?
Between the
This-
Declaration and the Constitution.
Besides some of the writers.
What existed? There was
What-
a governing document that existed between the two.
Oh my goodness.
Articles of Confederation.
Let's go on from there.
All
Okay.
right.
In
Camera 3. Here we go.
Camera
for,
3.
Anibal's
Camera
Attic.
3.
There we go.
Do I get an actual camera?
Look at
Oh my
that.
gosh. This is how it works now.
I know.
I'm really frightened.
Do
with
I
this
have to be
camera
quiet
looking.
now?
But I need to update your topics. So go ahead.
Okay, so in conversations that are happening around the world, real quick, Bolivia's on fire. The last 2 weeks have been a whirlwind of situations in regards to Bolivia and their political system breaking down. Basically, the leader of Bolivia, which his name is Evo Morales, basically became a dictator. He said he was only in a lot of South American countries. Their constitutions are written that you can only run one term. They're normally 5 to 6 years. They're larger terms than here in the United States. And the way he was trying to have it is that he could run for eternity, be president for the rest of his life, even though he said he wasn't going to do it. So then, of course, they make a vote. He denies the vote. They go back and say that it's unconstitutional. Well, he stacks the court for his own people that make it know that he can run for as long as he wants. So right there, all three branches are a disaster. Same thing that happened in Venezuela and same thing that happened in Cuba at the back of the time. So now you're in a position where they had to literally force him out of office. Johnny says resign. I say get kicked out. It was a coup, but not really a coup. I know what coups are, and it wasn't a coup. But that's basically what happens. Anytime, the people can be writing for as long as they want. We see it in Venezuela. We see it in China. But the moment the military steps in, that's when it hits the fan, and you no longer have power. So at the moment, there's this one woman who was the opposition senator. Her name is Chavez, which is indicative of the area around the world. She is now interim president until elections can be held in the new year. So that's really exciting. Other news in regards to Anibal's Attic, I'm going to just run through these real quick. The Trump trade deal for USMCA was officially approved in regards to the House. That vote will be coming next year. The Mexico and Canadian counterparts have already said they agree on the revisions, and those were more to make sure that labor practices were being conducted appropriately in the Mexican factories when it came to auto development. We also have a movement in the Japanese free trade agreement that's getting approved, and that was also announced. And phase 1 of the trade deal for China has been agreed upon. I say, and quote me if I'm wrong here. I say they break phase 1. Honestly, I think they're going to pass it. It's going to be great. And China will be the first one to break it because they don't understand the concept of waiting in lines. So that's my 30 seconds. I don't want to go any longer than that.
Well, and the one thing is that it's also comes
It's a
down
slow
to
week in the news.
it comes down to
What are you typing
China's
there?
ego. It comes down to China's ego, and I think they're tired of dealing with Trump. I think they realize the writing on the wall, which is that he's going to win re-election. They're going to give him this win, probably because they'd rather deal with him than deal with Democrats. But and give me your opinion on this. I mean, if Trump pulls off USMCA, the Japanese trade deal, the Chinese trade deal, and the renegotiation of NATO. I mean, good Lord, that's a hell of a resume, right?
Who would have thought he would be one of the most influential? What camera we're at? Who would have thought he would be one of the most influential presidents when it came to domestic and foreign policy? Domestic, it's the judges that he's really pushed through. When it comes to foreign, it's the renegotiation of trade deals, which he said he was going to do. Again, you're going to come to a situation in November in 2020 and be like, okay, am I going to vote for someone that promises the world, or I'm going to vote for someone that's actually done what he said he was going to do?
I don't know if he gets the NATO deal.
He already got some of the NATO deal.
Yeah, he got I think it was like 8%.
He
knocked off.
He renegotiated the payments of how much we have to pay to NATO.
How much we have to pay, right?
Well, and increase Germany and some of the other large countries.
He's pressured them, but there's nothing.
But that's the renegotiation. We no longer pay this.
That's been signed. That's it. Like he left that meeting.
He left the meeting signed.
Right.
We no longer are the largest contributor. Now we are lower and Germany is higher. So now Germany pays just as much as we do. Why? Because they're the ones that are right there. So again, I agree with Johnny. I think it's going to come to a point where you see that he constantly wins in these battles, and you're going to have, what are you going to say? That you don't like the way he tweets? Yeah, okay, we don't like the way he tweets, but he gets the job done. I don't care what he says as long as his policies are working the way they're supposed to work. My taxes are down, the wall's being built, let's move forward. I want a roaring 20s. Yes, I know what happens in the 30s, but I want a roaring 20s. I want to wear my flapper hats. I am ready for this coming decade. Flip the table. I'm done.
I'm gonna go ahead and make that into
a
little clip.
Its own clip. I'm ready for the Roaring 20s.
I am ready.
That's a hashtag.
I'm ready for the 20s. I'm so excited.
We can do it this time without what happens in the 30s.
I don't know that. It's the same argument with the pendulum. As far as the pendulum
Yeah, I was
swings
gonna
one
say
way.
I don't know that you can get one without the other on that one.
Exactly. But now you know, so you know to have plenty of cash.
Well, again, thank you so much to everybody for watching. And again, don't forget to follow us not only here on Facebook, if you're watching us live on Facebook.com/The Yard Sign. Thank you to everybody watching on the Tampa Bay Young Republicans page. You can also follow us. Please subscribe and comment on our YouTube channel as well. Just look up The Yard Sign on YouTube, and you'll recognize the little icon there as well. Feel free to subscribe, and you'll get notified when we go live and have other clips and interviews and stuff going up there. And then very soon, for Christmas, I'm going to give you the audio version of this program on just about every major podcast platform, and so that's going to be my my work over the next couple weeks. Thanks, Chris. Man, those awfully strong words for a rookie on the program.
Ooh, I'm telling you,
watch out,
Chris. You're not going to get invited back. You already have only one camera. Like, Johnny's gonna make it into no cameras.
That's right. Like, I already cut you out of this one.
It's not like a panel with just an evil.
So let's go ahead and pull up the menu. Actually, how do I see it? I gotta move the menu so it's not in my face. All right. Anyway, so back to the list of topics. So USMCA, we talked a little bit about this, and to be honest, and not to get too into the policy, because I'm not much of a policy wonk myself, but the truth of the matter is that this bill actually is not good for Florida farmers, because we do have so many similar agricultural products as Mexico does. And so while, yes, it's going to be a big win for the president and for the country at large, even certain parts of California their agricultural industries are going to suffer because of this new deal based on the concessions that were made to have allowed it to happen. And so it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, Florida's agriculture has been struggling anyways with the greening problems, and it's going to have to evolve. Of course, now with the legalization of medical marijuana, there's a lot of people moving into that space. I think there's going to be it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next coming years. But the orange industry continues to suffer due to greening, and there's even now some concerns that it may be trickling into other crops like strawberries, here in the Tampa Bay area, which is a huge crop for the area. So. USMCA, I mean, a big deal. Some people say that it was just some tweaking, some minor adjustments. I mean, what do you think, Anibal?
I understand the reasoning for the passage of USMCA. I think on a whole it'll be better. It's better than NAFTA. So that's the comparison that we need to have. We have NAFTA right now. I think we need something better than NAFTA. We can't go to a completely new free trade zone because that would be detrimental to us and it would be detrimental to our partners. I think this is a good step forward. I do see where there are a lot of benefits, but I also see where the pitfalls are. And I agree with Johnny that some are going to be damaged, but others, you have to think of it as a national situation. So some states are going to get better, some states are not. Our two largest trading partners, which is Mexico and Canada, we needed something like this, and it allows us to continue that growth around us. Again, I think it's like 80% of America's GDP is done internally, and 8%, I think 8 or 10% of US GDP is external, and of that, I think 6 to 8% of that is just those two countries. So we needed to do something.
I agree. I agree. I want to push back on Johnny though a little bit. Is that
whoa? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Because I know the numbers kind of like you do, is that 80% of our GDP is internal trade. Is the states trading with themselves. So even if we have some more trade with Mexico and Canada, does that really is that going to absolutely eviscerate the farming industry here in the state of Florida because we share some crops with Mexico? I think that's
no. I mean, it's the real thing. I mean, look again. 2 years ago when this whole process started, I was having to represent the senator's office, and I had to meet with a lot of the agricultural partners in the state, and they were all absolutely furious over. At that time, what was just the rumblings of what was going to be in this new deal. And to my knowledge, it hasn't really changed much. And when, you've got competing crops like tomatoes, strawberries and other products, that Mexico's also producing at a much cheaper cost, that's naturally going to hurt Florida farmers.
But the same way as you have the auto manufacturing that's done in Mexico, that require, and again, this trade agreement required them to pay more of hourly, not comparative to the United States, but at least higher. So the cost was somewhat effective. So their costs are increasing because they're increasing labor rights and labor laws down there that the agreement requires. It brings them up to the standards that Canada and the United States are already at.
Well,
and that's
closer,
not to the numbers that they need to be. But again, that's already happened. The majority of stuff is manufactured in Mexico, and then the design engineering is done in the United States, and then the putting it all together is done in the United States. So I think, again, yes, I think agriculture is going to get harmed a little bit more. There's also the benefits of fixing the Japan and the China deals. All that stuff also, again, there's so many levers are going up and down. So many
moving parts to this.
That's why it takes almost up to 5 to 10 years to do a free trade agreement because of all of these little things that come into play.
I'll yield to your experience and wisdom there, Johnny. But I I don't see it, you know. Maybe Florida needs to move into an information economy and a little.
Well, that's what, but that's where we're going.
It's kind of my point. We're
the third or fourth largest state.
But we still have a huge cattle industry. We still have a huge agricultural industry. There's a lot of rural parts of Florida that
the majority of Florida is still rural.
I agree with that, but at the same time, it's like, and a lot of those farmers are moving into the organic market. They're moving into a lot of the niche markets that they can serve local. They can, there's a lot of markets that they can still serve, and I think potentially even enjoy higher profits. So I don't see it necessarily driving them completely out of the industry, but I'm not a farmer, so don't take my advice.
No, you're an intellect.
I didn't say that either.
No, the majority, and again, as a Floridian, we need to always be cautious and fighting for our interior and making sure that those individuals are being heard, and they are being heard in Tallahassee, and they need to continue to be heard because they bring so much revenue, so many jobs, so much stability to the Florida economy that we need to focus on them and make sure that they are not forgotten. So that's something that's big on our minds here, and should be big on the minds of all the organizations when it comes to the Florida economy. Do you know who's the one leading the negotiation? Was it Kushner that was leading negotiations? I do not remember that. I need to do some research on that.
Yeah, I do not. All right, well, let's go ahead and start to get to the bottom of our list here. Time Magazine, of course, naming Greta Thunberg the Time Magazine Person of the Year. Predictable, I would say, especially given, again, the leaning of the media in general. There are obviously other people, and there's plenty of examples out there that people have made of other people who are far more deserving of this title. Much like the Nobel Prize, they've now been relegated to giving out awards to people who are undeserving. Because they haven't accomplished, the things that they're espousing. And so in the same ways as the Nobel Prize was given to President Obama, here we got Time Magazine giving Person of the Year to Greta Thunberg, who so far all she's managed to do is yell at the world leaders, both at the UN, and has also recently gotten herself into a bit of a hard spot between some things that she said about taking the world's leaders and putting them up against the wall if they didn't subject themselves to new environmental standards, and
basically threatening them.
Yeah, no, look, exactly, and obviously, look, I'm not going to condone or agree with with the president taking issue with it and tweeting at her, and I think that if he just ignored her, it would just go away. He's giving her more attention than she deserves.
I think the Time Magazine bit is expected. I wasn't really that surprised by them naming her.
I was, and the reason why I say I was because I was expecting. They've done it before where they have like an anonymous, like they'll do a movement, and they've done that before in the past. They'll do a large movement. The yellow vests were one time on their list, and they've had other people before.
Well, and there was a lot of people saying like, "Oh, the Hong Kong protesters should have been."
Well, the Hong Kong protesters, because they do a vote. This isn't just an anonymous, like random selection. There's a vote to see who is the person, who can be that person or that movement, and it was the Hong Kong by 30%, and so. And then they made this bullcrap example of like, well, they were violent and everything. I was like, what? You had Hitler. What year was Hitler? Hitler was 1938 Man of the Year. You had Joseph Stalin twice, 39, 42. So let's not go there when it comes to because it's violent that we're not going to do it. I agree with Johnny. It's become the Nobel Peace Prize, which it no longer stands for anything.
Yeah, it's I think one of the other people up for it, had discovered a bacteria that will eat plastic, to get rid of. So even if you want to go down the I don't know. The
Well, again, there's
environmental
tons of
culture.
examples out there. I mean, there's
Right.
there's a kid in Germany who apparently has planted, I don't know, millions of trees or thousands of trees, something like that. I mean, you're talking about it, as a buddy of mine used to say, he goes, you don't just talk about it, you got to be about it, and actually go out there and do something about it. What has this girl done other than yelling at people on camera? She hasn't accomplished anything.
No, someone else that they should have brought up also. His last name is Slat, S-L-A-T. 17 years old, designed a device to take out plastics out of the ocean, and he's now 24, and now they have large devices that remove plastic out of the ocean. Those are the people. There was a huge YouTube campaign to plant 1 million trees by 2020, and it's a fascinating, like, every dollar you donated, it was a tree, and they were figuring out a way. It was the ingenuity of figuring out a way how to do that, and people got mad about, like, well, that's not fixing the problem. No, not fixing the problem is just focusing on straws. That's not fixing the problem. Fixing the problem
Or just yelling
is,
at people at the UN.
yeah,
You know,
that's
it's
not fixing anything. But
But it is fixing the problem. When you're talking about erosion, when you're talking about, carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide, sorry.
But that's what I'm saying. Planting the trees, figuring out, putting technology in the oceans to clean the oceans.
Right.
That is fixing the problem.
Yeah.
Yelling at the UN, which is basically a bunch of diplomats that don't pay their traffic tickets. It's still something of mine. They don't pay their traffic tickets. Any New Yorker will know that they just park anywhere they want to, and they never pay their traffic tickets. But again, that's a body of people that don't care, that believe that Iran should be charge of the women's coalition. Like, that's the stupidity of the UN. And again, I used to love the UN, and now I think it's nothing but a bureaucracy that is consuming itself, that we're paying too much money for, Trump.
Well, like our good friend Christopher Carter, who is going to become a regular on the show, but he used to cover the United Nations for OAN, and he says that basically it's just an international money laundering operation.
Oh, yeah.
The money that flows through there, and you're talking about, of course, all the unpaid tickets, and God knows how much stuff they get away with legally and illegally simply for being diplomats in the United States. We'll have Chris back on, once they call the General Assembly back in session. But, again, it's another organization like NATO where I think we need to reevaluate our role and our commitment to it and scale back.
As Dave Chappelle once said, you should only be focusing on two things. That's just giving people food and medicine. That's all they can do. They're not a peace-seeking force. They're literally a bloated bureaucracy for people to feel good about themselves and give large speeches. Again, it makes everyone equal. And as soon as you do that, then no one is. And that's what the UN has become. It's no longer a body that tries to stop the Darfurs of the world. It's the body that allows for genocide to happen and for people to be arguing about what the word genocide means while millions are being killed.
Well, and it provides cover for the very things that they're being accused of internationally. And so you talked about Iran obviously leading, the Women's Council. You see when we're talking about different rights, human rights in Venezuela, being among the leaders of the human rights organization within the UN.
The anti-Israel sentiment in the UN is so disgusting. I think, and Jake knows these numbers better than I do. Like, I think it's 60 to 80% more.
Everyone just needs to read Nikki Haley's new book to understand what's going on at the UN.
She's someone I can't wait to vote for after 2020.
I wasn't gonna say that.
I can't wait for Nikki Haley to run. She is going to be
as well.
a perfect candidate for president. Will I vote for her at the end? Yes, but just so that Republicans can take off the knees of the feminist movement. And it was the Republicans that put in the first female president. I can't wait for that moment to happen. Female minority that is a governor. I'm done.
All right.
But
wow.
her stance on the UN and in her book, it really describes how egregiously terrible the United Nations is.
Oh, completely.
All right. Sorry, I got a little bit of a typo here. There we go.
Oh, the Civic.
So I decided to change our last topic of the day. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you again for watching. Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, incredibly popular. And this is actually a subject that's kind of been around, I would say at least from around when the Tea Party started, which is that especially among conservative organizations, groups, individuals, there is a belief that we are losing touch with our own history, the accuracy of the history of which it's told, and we see it in these videos, these kind of man on the street videos all the time, and how little people actually know about our nation's history and surely our state's history. And so the governor is considering making it mandatory for high school seniors to take a civics test in order to be eligible for graduation. I think it's fantastic. I don't see a problem with it.
To pass a civics test.
To pass a civics test.
Not take.
Oh, did I say take? Yeah, you got to pass the civics test to graduate.
So we already kind of discussed this earlier. The wife and I were bored one date night last week, and we decided to take the test while we were sitting at dinner. And it was a fun conversation back and forth because we realized how much the West Wing has helped us in understanding this. It's sad, but it's true. She would when
there's a lot of things I was able to pick out that the West Wing actually got wrong, because my interaction with the immigration test was helping my mom study for it. So and I was a kid, so that was that's a whole different animal, I was a small kid, and those really gave me a background on originally, senators weren't elected by the people. No, they were appointed by the state legislature, and then you can opine on whether or not that's a good system or not,
It was supposed to be that, and I love the conversation that it brings, because at the end of the day, the senators were not supposed to be looking at what the country wanted. The senators were looking at what the state wanted. Yeah. And that was one move that the states gave away their freedom.
In the 17th.
Yeah. And so, again, I think the civic test is a great idea, because it makes
wonderful idea.
I think it's not, I want to say, it's not that difficult of a test. I took the test. I passed the test. I studied for a little bit also, just to see if I could pass it or not as a citizen.
There's little footnotes in there, things from the Federalist Papers that didn't even become part of the Constitution.
Well, no, it talks about who wrote. It's the Federalist Papers, one of the questions, one of the answers. But it's who wrote the Federalist Papers, or is the Federalist Paper a part of the governing body of the U.S. government? Which is not.
No, it's not.
Because of Alexander Hamilton. That's also something that I learned from a Broadway show.
I mean, I remember one of the big subjects, not just from taking a practice test, but by going through the book with my mom as a kid, and it was, okay, hey, one of the, I think the question was, what was the other proposal for the executive branch? And it was actually to have an executive committee, for the executive branch. And we ended up not having that. It's just really fun ideas of the framers really played around with a lot of different concepts, and the Constitution is the way it is, not because, some, 200-year-old, dead white guys decided to just make it that way.
Even better was
they discussed it, they debated it, they came up with all kinds of different ways of running the government.
The perfect example is the Electoral College. It wasn't something that they were expecting to come out of committee when they first started talking about how they elected the president, and it came out being the best way to solve the problem of the big states and the small states.
We were bringing up the parliamentary system earlier, and you got to think from a group of guys who were used to that system, who were used to, well, the legislative body chooses the executive, right? Whoever has a majority of the legislative body, and when they went to a biclamical legislature, they were like, well, now who's the executive? Who's gonna, because originally, I mean, if you have a uniclamical body, then okay, the speaker is essentially president, and they're like, no, we don't like that system. So they went to a two-body system, and then they said, no, we need a completely separate executive branch.
And that was the beauty. They were also, and of the time, they were looking at what was happening in France. They were looking at what was happening in Europe. George Washington was so adamant of an isolationist which has helped the United States for generations, and we still are basically an isolationist country in
Unless
regards
it messes with you get between us and our food or us and our money. It's
that's all the Americans care
No,
about.
but I mean, again, so to take the kind of libertarian perspective on here, can you really argue that you're an isolationist country when we have the military presence that we do around the world?
Well, that's a post World War II presence, right? I'd say pre World War II.
What is the agreement? The Belton Ford, something like that.
Bretton Woods.
Bretton Woods.
The Bretton Woods agreement.
I understand the argument where we are not as isolationists, but that was also to make that was a different term of almost colonialism, in the way that we would just put our bases in places and we would still let them do whatever they want to do, but we need to show our power and everything else. And again, it was more or less to show we became a world power by spreading our influence around the world, but we're still technically
to be the only infrastructure base left after World War
II. And so we had to take that mantle and be that person. Now Trump, in the world that we're in right now, is kind of starting to is that bull in the china shop, saying, what's the point of me having these trade negotiations and having all this stuff when it no longer benefits us?
Right.
Being the world leader was never meant to benefit us. We still don't even use it.
That was the Bretton Woods agreement. The Bretton, and again, this is all stuff that would be on the civics test. Is what's on the Bretton Woods agreement, and this is something that everyone should know. This is the Bretton Woods.
No, and look, and getting back to the point is that I think it's incredibly important. I think it instills a lot of good values, aside from the educational standpoint, a lot of good patriotism, which is, again, one of the things that Republicans harp on, which is the fact that I think the reason why we see more and more younger people advocating for other forms of government is because they don't fully understand why we have the form of government that we do and how brilliant it is in the way that it was formed.
I agree. If you do, and that's the same concept when it comes to socialism and communism and capitalism. You don't understand the ramifications of what you're saying. You don't understand the concept. What works in other countries? Yes, a country of 4 million people, of a homogenized nation in Switzerland,
with not even a socialist government.
Yeah,
it's not even a socialist government.
It's much different.
It's a capitalist government with a lot of redistribution.
Exactly.
And if that's what you're advocating, then advocate for that.
But it's easier for you to advocate that when you're a small homogenous country with no immigration whatsoever. Of course, you can do whatever you want in Japan as a government, because they don't even, I think it's less than 1% of immigration in Japan. Yeah. But you're dealing with a country of almost we're almost at 350 million people from coast to coast, and that the demographics are so wide. Things don't work here if they would work in the other parts of the world. That's the point of us having states. The states are here so that we could practice and see what systems work, what systems don't. Marijuana usage is a perfect example. Colorado, California, some parts. Do we agree with everything that Colorado accepts with their drug policies? No. Nope. So we take what they are working well in them, and then we use it on our side. That's the point of the states. And if all the states are doing something or not, then the federal government comes in and changes it, so then it's blanket around the country. But that's the point.
Not even necessarily.
But but if you know enough of your civics, and if you know enough of your particular form of government, then you know how to argue this. These people that are screaming on the corner of Kennedy and Franklin a few weeks ago have no idea how the system works. They have no idea. They're so upset.
Well, and then they come up with very vague arguments of, well, we need to have, redistribute. We need fairness. We need, whatever the subject of the day is of we need to tax the 1%, and it's like, okay, well, tell me more about this policy. Draw it out for me, because where's the limiting principle? Where's the end of that road? How much money do you want to take from them? You want to take all their money? And how much is that? And what can you buy with it? Like, you can't even fund the programs you want to fund with 100% confiscation of the top 1%.
And that's the scary part. That they are so adamant of taking away from the 1%. They're so adamant of taxing the rich and the top.
Because a lot of them, again,
they don't know.
Civics.
They don't know.
Back to civics and the fact that they don't know that, if I go through this exercise of if I go down this policy prescription, right? without even prejudging the policy, right? Well, I'm not going to be able to fund the program I want to fund, right? So then it forces them to be more honest with themselves. And this is what like Elizabeth Warren's not doing, right? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth Warren, says, well, we're just going to tax the rich and we're going to have, at least Bernie Sanders says, no, the middle class is going to have to pay, right? The middle class is going to have to pay for a $93 trillion bill.
They're trying to make you feel good while you confiscate other people's property,
but they're coming for yours.
And again, yeah,
and you don't know it, and you don't know it because you haven't learned your civics.
If you're living in the middle, if you're paying taxes, you're part of the middle class, you're going to get taxed more. There's no way that we are going to be able to bloat trillions of dollars with. And again, if you don't know what the U.S. budget is broken down into, it's a lot of it you can't cut. A lot of it you can. You can cut the military, you can cut domestic spending, and that's basically it. And you're not allowed to touch anything else. No one's going to touch Social Security. That's the third rail. But they don't understand the concept of how the U.S. government works. They are only concerned about their feelings, and their feelings say that it's unjust that we don't spread more money around. Well, then if that's how you feel,
and even
then
if they
go to a country that has a government that's going to align your positions. And if that's what you want, then head to Venezuela. I don't know what to tell you anymore.
I'll give some people the credit they're due, though, is when you meet Democrats, when you meet young Democrats, campaigning or working in city government for a particular policy prescription. Oh, they know their civics, right? They know their civics, and they understand, like, okay, there's a limiting principle here. There's only so much we can do. There's only, like, you can actually hold a conversation with them. And my question is how do I'd love to have some of the young Democrats on the show and ask them, like, how do you have a conversation with some of the people that are yelling on Kennedy and Franklin?
But
how do they, because they're on the same political side.
Are you and me in a government position? No. We don't work for government. We never had that kind of situation. I feel that having a conversation with Republicans that are more in the private sector is a lot different than having conversations with young Democrats in the private sector, because a lot of them either just don't like Trump, or they want more of distribution. They want distribution of the U.S. government. They no longer feel that a capitalist society is beneficial for the whole of the country, and they want to go somewhere, and they want to do something else. And that's great. We talk about it all the time.
No, it's not.
I know. Winston Churchill tells it all the time. Yes, capitalism is one of the worst systems ever, and except for all the others. And that's the logical conversation that people have.
Which is why you look at the Nordic countries and you get to, okay, a capitalist country that doesn't have to pay for its own defense because of NATO.
Because of us.
Because of us. All right. A capitalist country that doesn't have to worry about flipping the bill for its own defense, that has a heavy redistribution arm. All right. If that's what you're advocating for, well, that inevitably then falls into foreign policy, because okay, well, we're going to have to close down some bases. We're going to have to shuffle some things around, and we're going to have to close down the border because, Milton Friedman always said, look, you can have welfare or you can have open borders, but you can't have both.
You can't have both.
All right. You can have a redistributionist system, or you can welcome you can welcome the rest of the world.
But they don't know, and that's the problem. Why millennials and people of younger generations
they want both because they don't even understand the limit.
But they don't understand. They don't understand the concept of socialism. They didn't grow up with the Iron Curtain. They have no idea who Margaret Thatcher and Stalin really were. When you have what's the Chavez shirts that people
Che Guevara.
When you have a Che Guevara shirt on, it doesn't make me think that you're intelligent. It makes me think you're an idiot, because you have someone that was shooting people in the streets during the revolution, and it was causing more pain than anything else. It's like you basically having a Hitler shirt on. That's the concept that they don't understand. That's how ignorant that generation and my generation has become. Spanish people. When I run into a Spanish person that's one or two generations into the country and they're all for socialism, they're all for everything. I'm like, when was the last time you went to South America? When was the last time you talked to your parents and what they had to live through?
Well, why they came here in the first place?
My father was with his siblings underneath a bed during the revolution in Dominican Republic during this dictatorship.
I have cousins who will give me the argument. All right, Mexico's not a socialist country or anything, but I'll ask, like, okay, well, if America's so terrible, why aren't you back in Mexico?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, because America's keeping Mexico down, man. like this is America's keeping South America down. Like it's. And so there's no winning. There's no logical point to be made, because it's like, okay, so the reason you're in the United States is because you can make a living here, and the reason you're not going to go home is because you feel like you can't make as much of a living there. But that's the fault of America. That's not the fault of bad policy.
That's the fault of colonialism, and that's the fault of slavery, and that's the fault of racism, and it's you're always blaming someone else. The moment you stop blaming someone and just say, "This is my life. These are the cards that I was dealt with." Everyone has the same. Again, everyone is dealt cards at the beginning of their life. Some have it better, some have it worse. But at the end of the day, it's what you do with those cards. I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's if you just pull yourself up from your bootstraps that you'll make it, because that's not a legitimate conversation either.
Because most, at the same time, it's most small businesses are owned by first-time immigrants. And they really pull themselves up. They really pull themselves. They show up here. Escaping some country somewhere around the world, or they immigrated here, and they start wherever they start. Like you said, they have whatever set of cards they're dealt with, but they wake up every morning and they try to make their lives just a little bit better.
But I'm not
crying about, I was dealt a bad hand, I want to reshuffle.
Again, this is an all Hispanic group again. I'm not gonna sit here and say that there aren't people in horrible situations, that the cycle of poverty and the cycle of abuse and the cycle of negligence doesn't hamper them. And again, this is the reason why we have the social network, the social net,
safety net.
This is the reason why we have so many government organizations that make sure. I mean, my wife works in the school system. The fact that they're having to ship kids home with food, knowing that the only time they get a meal is during school hours, the only time they actually get adult supervision is during school hours, is heart-wrenching. And so you are trying to do as much as you can to bring those kids and break the cycle of poverty.
It's heart-wrenching, but at what point do you hold the parents accountable as well?
Yeah, but
because again, that I have people that work in the school system as well, and they tell me those stories where they don't have adequate clothing, they don't have adequate food, yet they're collecting social services. And at what point do you begin to hold them accountable to make sure that they are putting those social benefits to what their intent is?
The Trump administration did the best thing I think they could have done when they redid the food stamp, when they redid the food stamp argument, which was, if you are an able-bodied citizen that does not without kids in the household, then your limit of how long you can be on food stamps has been decreased. I think that was a perfect example of keeping people accountable, because the job of the government is not to build a nanny state.
Right.
The job of the government is to help those that are having a problem at the time.
And I just saw this today, and this is, I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but Josie Tomko introduced a bill on making it easier to adopt foster kids. Mm-hmm. Why is that such a bureaucratic nightmare in the state of Florida?
Yeah.
Why is
absolutely.
that? Like if we want to help these kids, there are plenty of parents who if they're in the foster system, not necessarily still with their parents, but I haven't read the bill yet. But
it's because it's cheaper, and I'll say this honestly, because I know people that have been adopting children for years, and I have one. My wife and I are friends with a couple at church. What up, Bay Hope? And they are running a great program to try to link parents to children, and they themselves have now adopted another child. And
it's expensive.
And it's expensive, and the only reason why they're able to really do it is because they have the funds and finances to be able to run it. But it's until someone dies in the system before someone makes any kind of legitimate movement. And the system in Florida, at least, has been trying to just find a relative to put them in, and then that's where they stick the kid at. And it's more or less, they think that the kid will be better if they're with somewhat of a relative, but really the point of them being in the foster problem is because the parents themselves have caused such a detriment to that child.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think until you start figuring it out, again, this is what I'll say this out loud. This is what happens when the church removes itself from the day-to-day workings of the lives of people. There was a time where there were orphanages run by churches, what I think needs to happen again. The fact that there is an orphan in the United States, with so much money in the churches, with so much crossover, it was ridiculous. I think the church really needs to step up its game and take this as a mantle to remove these kids from the. There should be no children in the foster system.
Well, we went way off topic.
Yeah, we're completely off topic. I brought up
It's all
church.
part of civics.
I brought up church.
It's all part of civics. It's a
My
broad
goodness.
subject.
I almost forgot what the topic was. All right, so best of luck to Governor DeSantis. I think he shouldn't have too much of a problem getting that passed. I don't see. I would see it incredibly difficult for legislators to make the case that a civics test, in order to require, would be somehow detrimental. If anything, it puts it puts the pressure on your civics and history teachers and that sort of thing. But you've heard people say this all the time. If a new immigrant and a new citizen to the United States has to take that test, then why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we as high school students or college students have to do the same? So on that note, again, thank you so much for watching. Again, it's every Monday night. We kick off around 7 o'clock right here on Facebook and YouTube. We're way done. Yeah, and we appreciate you again following us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and more platforms to come. Again, if you'd like to reach out to us, just hit us up on any of those platforms. Also, again, for our buddy Hector Gonzalez, there's going to be the Republican National Hispanic Association Christmas Party, 6:30 to 8 in Riverview. Check out the address in the comments. How about Anibal? You got anything you need to mention?
Not really, actually.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to all. Happy New Year's. We're really excited for this coming decade. I will say, what's up?
Roaring 20s.
Roaring 20s.
Hashtag Roaring 20s.
What up, Devon? What up, everyone? I actually created like a watch party. I guess that's what the kids are calling it these days.
Yes.
On Facebook. So hopefully some people saw that. I apologize if I offended you in any way. You can write a letter to no one. So that will be going on. But no, I am really excited for this coming year. I'm excited to see what this program has in store. I think we're just getting bigger and bigger, and I'm super excited for it. So what up, USF? What up, kids that are watching from there, and everyone else from Bay Hope?
All right, Chris, again, thanks for being on the show.
Not a problem.
Any final words?
Please invite me back.
Think about it.
I'll think about it.
Thanks again for watching, everybody. And again, for more videos, subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us here on Facebook. And if you'd like to be on the show, hey, reach out to us. You never know. All right. We thank you so much for being here. We'll catch you all next time. Hit the intro.